Have you ever felt like life is slowly winning against you? Not in some dramatic way, just quietly. Your motivation fades a little, your discipline slips a little, your confidence becomes uncertain. And suddenly the goals that once excited you feel heavy. You wake up tired, you scroll through your phone. You promise yourself today will be different, but somehow the day slips away. Again. Now here's the question most people never ask themselves. What if the real problem isn't your circumstances? What if the real problem is your mindset? Because the truth is, life doesn't break people overnight. It wears them down slowly. Small doubts, small excuses, small moments where you choose comfort over growth. And after enough of those moments, something inside you changes. You stop believing you're capable of more. But wait. This is where things get interesting. Because throughout history there's been a type of person who refuses to be worn down by life. A person who faces chaos, pressure, uncertainty, and somehow becomes stronger. We call that person a warrior. Now before you imagine armor and swords, pause for a second. The warrior we're talking about today isn't fighting battles on a field. The real battlefield is much closer. It's your mind. Think about it. Every day your mind fights invisible battles. The battle between discipline and distraction. The battle between courage and fear. The battle between the life you want and the habits pulling you away from it. And most people lose these battles without even realizing they're fighting them. Now here's something surprising. Being mentally unbreakable doesn't mean you never feel fear. It doesn't mean you never doubt yourself. It means something much more powerful. It means you refuse to stay down. You adapt. You adjust. You move forward anyway. But this is where the story usually begins. Because every warrior starts in the same place. Confusion. You feel stuck. Like you're capable of more. But something is holding you back. Maybe it's procrastination. Maybe it's overthinking. Maybe it's the quiet voice in your head saying, maybe you're not good enough. Now let me tell you something most people won't admit. That voice exists in almost everyone. Even the people who seem confident. Even the people who appear strong. The difference is what they do with that voice. Some people listen to it. Others train themselves to challenge it. And that training is what builds the warrior mindset. Now here's the twist nobody talks about. Your mind is incredibly powerful. But it's also incredibly easy to train the wrong way. Every time you avoid a challenge, your brain learns to avoid discomfort. Every time you give in to distraction, your brain becomes weaker at focusing. Every time you quit something early, your brain remembers quitting as an option. At first, these decisions seem small, but over time, they shape your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who struggles, someone who hesitates, someone who doesn't follow through. Now pause for a moment and think about this honestly. Does that pattern feel familiar? Because if it does, you're not alone. Millions of people feel this way. They want discipline, they want confidence, they want control over their life. But they don't know where to begin. And this is where the warrior mindset enters the story. Because warriors don't wait until they feel ready. They train themselves to act even when they're not. Let me ask you something. Why do soldiers train in harsh conditions? Why do athletes practice when they're exhausted? Why do great performers repeat the same skill thousands of times? It's not because they enjoy suffering. It's because they understand something most people ignore. Pressure reveals the truth about your mind. When life gets difficult, your habits take over. Not your intentions, your habits. And if your habits are weak, life becomes overwhelming. But if your habits are strong, pressure becomes fuel. This is the moment where everything starts changing. Because once you understand that your mind can be trained like a muscle, the entire game shifts. You stop asking, why is life so hard? And you start asking, how do I become stronger? Now here's the part most people resist. Training your mind is uncomfortable. You'll face resistance. You'll face doubt. Sometimes you'll even feel like giving up. But that resistance is the exact moment growth begins. And the next realization about the warrior mindset might be the most powerful one of all. Here's the realization most people avoid. Your mind is not naturally strong. It becomes strong only through resistance, just like a muscle. If you never challenge a muscle, it stays weak. Your mind works the same way. But this is where the modern world quietly traps people. Everything around you is designed to remove discomfort. Food is instant. Entertainment is endless. Distraction is always one swipe away. And without realizing it, people slowly lose their mental edge. Not because they're lazy, but because their environment trains them to avoid struggle. Think about the last time you tried to focus on something important. Maybe studying, maybe building a project, maybe improving your life. And suddenly your brain says, check your phone, take a break, you'll start later. Sound familiar? Be honest with yourself for a second. How often does that happen? Now here's the uncomfortable truth. Every time you obey that voice, your brain learns something. It learns that discomfort means stop. And once your brain learns that pattern, life becomes harder. Because every meaningful goal requires discomfort. Growth is uncomfortable. Discipline is uncomfortable. Facing your fears is uncomfortable. But warriors understand something powerful. Discomfort is not the enemy. Discomfort is the training ground. And this is where things begin to shift inside you. Because once you stop running from discomfort, something strange happens. Your mind starts adapting. The task that once felt impossible suddenly feels manageable. The fear that once felt overwhelming begins to shrink. But wait, before that transformation happens, there's always a moment of doubt. And that moment is dangerous. Because right before people become stronger, their brain tries to convince them to quit. It whispers things like, "This is too hard. Maybe this isn't for you. You can try again tomorrow." Now here's something interesting. That voice isn't your enemy. It's actually your brain trying to protect you. Your brain is designed to avoid pain. But here's the irony. The same system that protects you from danger also tries to protect you from growth. And that's why the warrior mindset requires awareness. You learn to recognize that voice. You learn to question it. And sometimes you ignore it completely. Now think about this. Have you ever done something difficult and afterward felt proud? Maybe you finished a tough workout. Maybe you pushed through a long day of work. Maybe you kept a promise to yourself. And for a moment, you felt powerful. That feeling is not random. That feeling is your mind realizing something. You're stronger than you thought. And the more you experience that feeling, the more your identity begins to change. You stop seeing yourself as someone who avoids challenges. You begin seeing yourself as someone who faces them. This is the beginning of the warrior identity. But this next realization changes everything. Because being mentally unbreakable doesn't mean you always win. In fact, warriors fail a lot. They fail more than most people. But they interpret failure differently. Where most people see proof that they're not capable, warriors see information. A failed attempt becomes feedback. A mistake becomes training. A setback becomes preparation. Now think about the last time you failed at something important. What did your mind say? Did it say, "You're not good enough"? Or did it say, "This is part of the process"? Most people choose the first interpretation, and that single thought stops them from trying again. But warriors choose the second interpretation, and that choice changes everything. Because the moment failure becomes feedback, fear loses its power. Now here's a question worth thinking about. What would your life look like if failure didn't scare you anymore? Seriously, imagine approaching challenges without the constant fear of embarrassment. Imagine taking risks without overthinking every possible outcome. Imagine waking up with the quiet confidence that no matter what happens, you'll handle it. Does that version of you feel far away? Or does it feel possible? Think about that for a moment. Because the truth is, that version of you already exists. It's just buried under years of habits. Habits that trained your mind to doubt instead of act. But habits can be rewritten. And in the next part of this journey, you're about to discover the most powerful training method warriors use to reprogram their minds. And once you see it, you'll never look at discipline the same way again. Now here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Most people believe discipline is about forcing yourself to do things you hate. Waking up early, grinding endlessly, pushing through misery. But that belief is exactly why so many people fail. Because forcing yourself only works for a short time. Eventually, your willpower runs out. And when it does, you fall back into old habits. But warriors understand something deeper. They don't rely on motivation. They build systems. Wait till you hear this. The strongest minds in the world aren't strong because they try harder. They're strong because they remove the need to try so hard in the first place. Think about a professional athlete. They don't wake up every morning debating whether to train. Training is simply what they do. It's part of their identity. And that's the real secret of the warrior mindset. Identity. Because once something becomes part of who you are, discipline stops feeling like punishment. It becomes natural. Now imagine two different people. The first person says, "I'm trying to wake up earlier." The second person says, "I'm the type of person who wakes up early." Same action. Completely different mindset. The first person is negotiating with themselves every morning. The second person has already decided who they are. And once identity changes, behavior follows. But here's the challenge. Changing identity feels uncomfortable at first, because your brain still remembers the old version of you. The version that procrastinated, the version that hesitated, the version that quit halfway. So when you start acting differently, your mind pushes back. It says things like, "This isn't really you. You're pretending. You'll probably fail again." Now here's something most people don't realize. That resistance is actually proof you're changing. Growth always feels unnatural at first. Think about learning to ride a bike. At the beginning it feels impossible. You wobble, you fall, your balance is terrible. But eventually something clicks. And once it clicks, you never forget. Mental strength works exactly the same way. At first, discipline feels forced, then it becomes familiar, and eventually, it becomes automatic. But here's the part nobody warns you about. Right before that breakthrough happens, there's usually a moment where you want to quit the most. A moment where your brain says, "This effort isn't worth it." And that moment is the real test. Because the warrior mindset is built in those invisible moments. Moments where nobody is watching. Moments where quitting would be easy. Moments where the old version of you tries to return. Let me ask you something honestly. How many goals in your life disappeared during that exact moment? Right when things became difficult. Right when progress slowed down. Right when doubt got louder. Most people retreat there, but warriors pause. They breathe, and they remind themselves of something powerful. Discomfort is temporary. Growth is permanent. And once you internalize that truth, everything begins to shift. But here's the next twist. Mental strength is not just about pushing forward. It's also about controlling your attention. Because attention is the most valuable resource you have. Where your attention goes, your energy follows. And where your energy goes, your life begins to move. Now think about this. How much of your attention gets stolen every day? Notifications, social media, endless scrolling, tiny distractions that feel harmless, but slowly drain your focus. And when your attention becomes scattered, your mind becomes weak. Warriors protect their attention like a weapon. They choose what deserves their focus. They decide what matters, and they eliminate what doesn't. But this next realization might surprise you. The greatest enemy of the warrior mindset isn't failure, it's comfort. Comfort is seductive. Comfort is easy. Comfort whispers, "You deserve a break." And sometimes that's true. But comfort also has a hidden cost. Too much comfort makes you fragile, and fragile minds break when life gets difficult. Warriors train the opposite quality, resilience. They build a mind that adapts, a mind that stays calm under pressure, a mind that refuses to collapse when things go wrong. And here's the strange part. The more resilient your mind becomes, the less intimidating life feels. Problems become puzzles, stress becomes energy, and fear becomes direction. But there's one final shift in thinking that truly makes someone mentally unbreakable. And once you understand it, you'll never look at challenges the same way again.
Now here's the final shift, and honestly, it's the one that separates people who stay stuck from people who transform. Most people believe strength means never breaking, never struggling, never feeling overwhelmed. But that idea is a myth. Even warriors feel fear. Even warriors feel doubt. Even warriors have moments where everything feels heavy. The difference is not what they feel. The difference is what they do next. Because mentally unbreakable people understand something powerful. Your emotions are signals, not commands. Fear doesn't mean stop. Doubt doesn't mean quit. Stress doesn't mean you're failing. They're just messages from your mind trying to understand what's happening. But here's the part nobody teaches you. You can feel fear and still move forward. You can feel doubt and still take action. You can feel overwhelmed and still keep going. And when you learn to separate emotion from action, something incredible happens. You stop being controlled by temporary feelings. Instead, you become guided by long-term purpose. Think about how many decisions people make based purely on how they feel in the moment. They skip workouts because they feel tired. They delay goals because they feel unmotivated. They avoid opportunities because they feel nervous. But feelings change constantly. Purpose doesn't. And warriors anchor themselves to purpose. They ask a different question. Not, how do I feel today? But, who do I want to become? That one question changes everything. Because once your identity becomes stronger than your mood, consistency becomes possible. Now here's something interesting. Most people search for motivation when life gets difficult. But motivation is unreliable. Some days it's there. Most days it isn't. Warriors don't wait for motivation. They create momentum. And momentum starts with very small decisions, almost invisible ones. Choosing discipline when nobody notices. Finishing the task you promised yourself. Keeping the small commitments that build self-trust. Because that's what mental strength really is. Self-trust. The quiet confidence that when things get hard, you won't abandon yourself. Think about that for a second. How different would life feel if you completely trusted yourself? If you knew that no matter what challenge appeared, you'd face it. Not perfectly, but persistently. That's the warrior mindset. Not perfection, persistence. But here's something most people never realize until much later. The warrior path isn't just about strength.
It's about peace. Because when you stop running from difficulty, life becomes simpler. You stop overthinking every decision. You stop fearing every possible outcome. You stop wasting energy fighting battles inside your own mind. And in that quiet space, clarity appears. You begin to see your life differently. Challenges become opportunities to grow. Setbacks become stories of resilience, and the future stops feeling like something to fear. Instead, it becomes something to build. But let's be honest for a moment. This shift doesn't happen overnight. No one wakes up mentally unbreakable. It's built day by day, choice by choice, moment by moment. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, every time you choose courage over avoidance, every time you keep moving when quitting feels easier, those moments stack, and eventually something changes inside you. One day you'll face a problem that would have crushed the old version of you, and instead of panic, you'll feel calm. Instead of doubt, you'll feel determination. And that's when you realize something powerful. You didn't just change your habits, you changed your identity. You became the kind of person who can handle life, not because life became easier, but because you became stronger. So here's a question worth sitting with for a moment. Right now, which version of you is making decisions? The one that seeks comfort, or the one that builds strength? Only you know that answer. But here's the good news. Every single day gives you another chance to choose again. Another chance to train your mind. Another chance to step closer to the person you're capable of becoming. And maybe that's the real meaning of the warrior mindset. Not fighting the world, but mastering yourself. And if something in this journey felt familiar, if even one idea made you pause and think, don't just scroll past it. Sit with it. Think about it. And start making the small choices that build a stronger mind. Because the strongest warriors aren't the loudest. They're the ones quietly becoming unstoppable.